It's been a month since the new Empire's release, and within this past month, there has been a lot of controversy on the scaling chain of the new Empire, with some of the most commonly debated topics as of right now being Ghidorah versus Shimu and Evolved versus Burning Godzilla. Now, the novel also gives us some answers to questions that we've had in the past, but has also made us question some things that have been said within the novel. So today, I'll be going over the overall scale of the new Empire, what kind of scaling has been brought to the table, and has the chain of the scaling in the Monsterverse been affected by new Empire. I'll be going over Kong, Godzilla, Skar King, and Shimo scaling this video individually, and how they all scale to each other. I'll also not be going over Mothra, since Mothra doesn't really even do anything besides trap Skar King's army and has a single statement of evolving. And with that being said, grab some popcorn because today is going to be an interesting video. Now, starting off with the Skar King. Skar King, or now renamed as Fraud King amongst the community, has some interesting scaling. For starters, Skar King and his army fought Godzilla in ancient times and were defeated by Godzilla, but was stated to have nearly killed Godzilla.
There's more. The war with the apes nearly destroyed Godzilla, but after a great battle, he imprisoned the apes in a fiery realm of Hollow Earth. Their false king remains obsessed with reaching the surface.
Now, it's contentious to say if Skar King had Shimu in the war or not, because the film shows Skar King having the whip, yet states that Skar King didn't obtain Shimu until after the war.
Trapped within their subterranean realm, the Skar King harnessed a terrible power, the ancient titan, Shimo.
But this also begs a couple of questions. How would the Iwi know that Skar King obtained Shimu after the war if they were trapped underground? And if Shimu wasn't in the war, then why is she in Skar King's lair? Now, these are all excellent questions, and while I believe if you were to say Shimu was a part of the war or not, I wouldn't blame you. As for my answer on the for this, I'm on the fence. I'm 50-50 on this, because there's arguments saying she is in the war, but also arguments saying that she isn't. But moving on from if Shimu was in the war or not, between Godzilla and Skar, we'll be going over to Skar versus Kong's fight. Now, the film shows Skar being faster and more agile than Kong, but other than that, there's nothing really that impressive about Skar King in this fight. I mean, after a single throw from Kong, Skar King knew that if him and Kong kept fighting, that he would have lost. Not to mention, the novel also supports this by saying that Skar King fears Kong. And not to mention, Skar probably has some of the worst durability feats within the Monsterverse. Not only is one hit from Kong making him realize that he was going to lose, but a single punch from Beast Club Kong is enough to knock out his tooth. But then a bunch of Skar King fans will go, but Skar King was off guard and when Kong hit him. Okay. Being off guarded doesn't decrease your durability in the Monsterverse, so this counter argument doesn't even disprove anything. The only okayish Dura feat he has is tanking the Spiral Ray from Godzilla, but it barely, and I mean barely, even grazed Skar King's back. And we see when Kong grabs Skar King and is about to toss him over to Godzilla, we see Skar King's back is just messed up from the Spiral Ray. So imagine what an actual hit the Spiral Ray would do to him. Okay, well, we know Skar King's durability is trash, but what about Skar King's attack potency and speed? Are they any better than Skar King's durability? Well, Skar King's AP is around the same area as durability because he doesn't really have any AP feats besides getting overpowered by Kong with one hand. It can't damage anyone without his whip. However, the only thing that's a saving grace for Skar King is his speed and agility. Off of what the movie shows, Skar King is faster than both Godzilla and Kong, with him casually dodging Kong's hits with no effort in the first fight, and could dodge Godzilla's Spiral Ray, with this being a faster Godzilla than previously shown before. However, even with this speed, Skar is still bottom tier in the verse in terms of, everything. I mean, being faster than someone doesn't automatically grant you a win, and not to mention, if he has no way to actually damage anyone in a fight, or tank an attack from them, how's he supposed to win? And it gets worse because Jared commented on Skar King versus Mechagodzilla and said that Mechagodzilla would win just because he's more powerful than Skar King. And he also stated that the only way Skar King could probably win would just be using his sheer speed. But that's about it for Skar King. And next up we have Kong. Now moving on to Kong, unlike Skar King, Kong shows far more impressive feats in everything than Skar King does. For starters, in his fight against Skar King, he's capable of overpowering Skar King with a single hand, so that should make him at least 2 times more powerful than the Skar King in base. This Kong is also stated to have grown more powerful than his Godzilla vs. Kong counterpart, and a statement saying that warbats are nothing to him now, and they can only win if they gang up on him in large quantities. The novel also states that when Kong fought the Drowned Viper, it was nothing to him and that he easily took care of it. And moving back to the Skar King versus Kong fight, after nearly getting choked out by Skar King, he grabs Skar King and throws him once, which was enough to make Skar King both fear Kong and realize that he was going to lose if they continued fighting. The same page also mentions that Kong has learned/adapted to Skar King's fighting style, so you can say that Kong he can adapt to others in a fight pretty quickly. Now, after Kong gets bullied by Shimu, which causes his arm to be severely damaged.
Trevor, he looks really hurt.
Yeah, it's not great. I'm seeing nerve damage, significant tissue loss.
Kong receives the Beast Glove, and now the film also states that the Beast Glove healed his frostbite caused by Shimu and also Amped Kong,
Heal the frostbite up nicely.
which is pretty clearly shown. But it also does show that he kind of struggles with trying to grab onto the cliff. But it also states that the glove was supposed to be a counter against Mechagodzilla.
After Mechagodzilla, we realized that there were some threats that even Kong couldn't face.
Because he knew that Kong couldn't take him on alone, or threats on Mechagodzilla's level. Now, there's a statement in the novel where Eileen says that Kong can never beat Skar King by himself, and this was after Kong beat Skar King, or would have beaten Skar King, I should say. Now, you can just say that this is just from the human perspective, but at the same time, Eileen has been studying Kong for over 10 years now, and then she said that he can't beat Skar King, even though he quite literally beat him up. So I'd say it's pretty weird, and I would be careful kind of using novel statements because there are some contradictions within the novel, but more on those later. Now, moving on from this, we get into probably the most contentious fight of the New Empire, Kong versus Godzilla. Now, Kong is capable of knocking Godzilla to the ground with the Beast Glove, and he proceeds to hit him with the R1 plus R2 combo. Now, as much as people say this knocked out Godzilla, with the novel trying to say he did, the film, however, very clearly disagrees with this. We see Godzilla's eyes wide open after Kong lands a combo on him, but then people try and go, oh, but the movie just cuts, so Godzilla could have been knocked out. Well, that's just wrong, because there's literally 0 cuts in the film. The only thing that happens is that sand falls, and after it subsides after like 2 seconds, Godzilla's eyes are literally wide open. And we also know that the last punch that Kong landed on Godzilla made Godzilla roll over. Which is how Kong was able to grab Godzilla so fast and he started dragging him so quickly. Now, there's also the fact that the novel stated after Kong landed a combo on Godzilla that he was so exhausted that... he was just exhausted. So you can't even make the argument of, oh, but Kong could have killed Godzilla while he was stunned. Now, the rest of the fight is pretty self-evident. I mean, Godzilla just demolishes Kong with 3 stomps to the chest, only for Kong to be saved by Mothra. So to all you Kong fans out there, Kong cannot and would have not killed Godzilla in Egypt fight. There's literally nothing stating that he would have, not even the novel tries to. Now, moving on to the final battle between Kong, Skar, Shimu, and Godzilla. Kong, with his beast up, capable of knocking out Skar's tooth as well as blocking Shimu's breath. Now, Kong is also able to overpower Skar King whenever Shimu's in there to help him out, which is pretty consistent with the previous statements. And that's about it that we have for Kong. Now, next up is the Ice Dog Shimu. Now, this is going to be a kind of a short segment, since I've kind of already gone over all the Shimu stuff in my Ghidorah vs. Shimu video. But I'll quickly go over it. Now, for starters, Shimu is confirmed within the movie to have created the last Ice Age, which would result in around multi-continental levels of energy, with the novel further expanding upon the Ice Ages, stating that Shimu has created every Ice Age within the past 3 million years. However, the film only states that she created the last Ice Age, but however way you look at it, we do know that Shimu can create Ice Ages, which consistently would have to be within the multi-continental level ranges of power. Now, the only problem with these Ice Ages is that we don't know how long it took for Shimu to create these Ice Ages, which can affect her scaling. Now, the GSK novel states that Shimu had frozen over Greenland within a few minutes to a few hours at max, and if we were to use these numbers to apply these to, Shimu's Ice Age, it would have taken anywhere from 3 hours to 5 days at max to have created these Ice Age on Earth. Now, this doesn't exactly apply to all of her AP feats, since she has to do it for prolonged periods of time for it to stack up, but she should still at least be in the multi-continental ranges of power. Now, speaking of Shimu freezing Greenland, calculations done by Apex versus Battle Wiki and Godzilla King of the Monsters have reached anywhere from country to continental and even up to large planet levels of energy at max. Promotional materials also say that Shimu has world-ending powers, to which the novel also states that Shimu is a world-ender. However, the film does not state this, and also, at the end of the novel, they also said that they kind of exaggerated Shimu's power. Now, when Shimo and Skar King appear in Rio, Shimu used her breath to create a storm of Rio, which is calculated into the town levels of power, but likely should be far higher due to Shimu being able to freeze things on a subatomic level, with this being able to result in anywhere from continental to multi-continental levels of power. And in the final battle, it's stated that Shimu was superior to both Pink and Spiral evolved Godzilla, and that Shimu could have possibly stunned Godzilla when she tossed him across Rio. Now, the only thing I could possibly disagree with here in Shimu's section would her being above Spiral evolved, but I'll go more over that on the final section, which is Godzilla's. Now, last but certainly not least, like I just said, is Godzilla, which is where the scaling is really going to get heated. I just want to quickly go over the Godzilla versus Skar King war real quick. With the novel stating that Godzilla fought Skar King with an army. Now, this is pretty easily debunkable since the film just directly shows that Godzilla fought him alone, his entire army. But that's all I wanted to get out of the way. But moving on. Now, I cannot talk. Moving on to the Scylla fight. And now, this fight is pretty weird because there's two different official sources, The Hunted and the novel of Godzilla x Kong, both stating two different time frames of the Scylla fight. For example, The Hunted, it says that the Scylla fight takes place merely a few weeks after the ending of GVK, yet the novel says that the Scylla fight took place in 2027. Now, before I explain which I personally believe, some of you may be confused on how The Hunted even says a few weeks, so I'll go more in depth on it. For starters, it references when Godzilla reawakens, when he hunts Scylla, that this was the first time he was on the move in a few weeks. And then Bernie goes on to reference the attack on Pensacola, which was the first scene of Godzilla in Godzilla vs. Kong. And now for my answer on which I believe to be correct, I think it makes more sense for the opening to be a few weeks because both The Hunted says so, and also the Godzilla x Kong novel also states when going back to the Scylla fight, that Godzilla had a 3-week rest before waking up and hunting Scylla. So this would seem kind of consistent with it being a few weeks. So I think it's more reasonable to lean onto that side of the argument. Now for The Hunted being a few weeks, if we were to use this, I would still argue that Godzilla should be around 25%, maybe a little bit higher, since this was only a few weeks after the Mechagodzilla beatdown and he did have a 3-week rest. Now after Godzilla obliterates Scylla, who was amped by 30 nukes, he goes on to his orbit power plant in France. Now this power plant doesn't really have any statements on radiation levels and things like that, but we do know that this brought Godzilla up to 100%. And now while most people think the statement is referring to the Scylla fight, it actually isn't. You have to pay really close attention. The statement actually talks about Godzilla absorbing the power plant, saying that he was charging for something, and then they refer back to the Scylla fight since that was the last time Godzilla had to fight against something. And then they say that this power plant that Godzilla absorbed brought him back up to 100%. Now the Godzilla fight also, or not the Godzilla fight. Now Godzilla also releases a pulse in France. However, the novel states that Godzilla used an EMP instead, but the film kind of disagrees with this. When Godzilla releases his pulse, it blows everything up in the area, and the drones literally blow up, and they don't just shut off like an EMP would, like the Mutos. Now, after Godzilla gets his amp, he goes to fight against Tiamat, who has evolved since the last time we saw her. And after Godzilla one-shots Tiamat, it's stated that he absorbed her DNA and incorporated it into himself. Then he absorbs all Tiamat's lair, which is stated to be the biggest stockpile of energy on Earth.
The Arctic layer sits in the direct path of electromagnetically charged solar winds, making it the largest stockpile of energy on Earth.
This is Monarch Air Team to base, tracking over Godzilla's location. We've closed the shipping lanes within 300 miles. Plasma readings indicate he's absorbing everything in there.
So you can argue that Tiamat's lair is above all the Hollow Earth energy. However, I don't fully agree with it because they say in GXK that they have discovered less than 5% of the Hollow Earth, but the thing is they have readings on the core of the Hollow Earth in Godzilla vs. Kong, so I guess you can still argue it. However, I'm personally not going to side with that argument yet until future movies. Now, after absorbing Tiamat's lair, Godzilla gets an energy capacity boost of 20 times and a power increase of 2 times. Now, while some people like to say it's just a promotional guide and things like that, people also have to realize that energy capacity is just storage and not power. So 20 times wouldn't even be power, and that this is just an energy statement. Now, for the promotional guide, it's literally an official statement. So you can't really be like, oh, it's not valid because it's not in the film and blah, blah, blah. Now, toys also state that evolved Godzilla is an all-stats amp, meaning Godzilla's speed, agility, and everything else would have increased, so he should be faster than previous forms that were shown on screen before. We also have statements besides the toys stating that evolved Godzilla is stronger than before. And the opening credits also state that Titans gain new skills and refine them over the years, so this Godzilla should be the most skilled in terms of fighting than the others. After evolving, the next time we see Godzilla is when he fights Kong, and after getting briefly stunned, not knocked out, as I went over this in the Kong section, he completely stomps Kong like he did in Godzilla vs. Kong, before Kong is saved by Mothra. After this, we get our first encounter of Godzilla vs. Shimu in the New Empire. And Shimu is capable of freezing Godzilla, but after Mothra flaps her wings in Shimu's face, Godzilla is capable of breaking out. And for the rest of the fight, they seem pretty even with them trading blows, headbutting each other, before falling through the portal and into Rio. And once they fight in Rio, it's shown that Godzilla caused some burn marks on Shimu, and that Evo was stunned or injured for quite some time after Shimu tossed him with his tail. However, when Godzilla gets back up and goes supercharged, they say that nobody's ever seen energy readings like these, and when he fires his spiral ray, it's said to be the strongest ray ever shot. Now, when Godzilla's spiral ray barely grazed Skar King, it burned off parts of his skin, and when Skar King tries to hit Godzilla with his whip, Godzilla actually breaks it. And while this may not seem that impressive at first, if you actually dig into it, Skar King's whip is actually made up of a warbat, so Godzilla should be able to casually crush a warbat skeleton when biting against one. Now, after this, Godzilla goes to attack Shimu, and the spiral ray actually does cause damage to Shimu. However, the damage isn't actually shown after, but you can say that this is just bad CGI. But if you pay really close attention, we can actually see supercharged Godzilla overpowering Shimu in the background, and as Suko breaks the crystal, Shimu is actually getting pushed over by Godzilla. Now, I do want to say there's a couple things I disagree with here, and that is mainly the energy reading statement. Now, if you're to use these energy reading statements, this would obviously put Godzilla above things like Supercharged from 2019 and Burning Godzilla and everybody else. But the problem with this is that we don't have energy readings on critical nuke damp Godzilla. I mean, they verbatim state that, his power is off the charts, and that after, once the 6-minute mark hits, the Argo is damaged and destroyed, so they leave. So they don't even get the rest of the energy readings on Godzilla. They literally can't. Not to mention, Ghidorah doesn't even have energy readings himself. And also, if you take into account Burning Godzilla literally has no energy readings. Like, not even guides state this, the art book, nothing states this. So with this being said, I would probably rule out any statement of Supercharged Godzilla being above beings like Amped Ghidorah, Nuke Amp 19, or Burning Godzilla, and probably a couple others. But other than that, I think the strongest energy readings would be fine, since it also just supports Evil being above base 19. But that's kind of about it that I disagree with. But yeah, that's about all I have for Evolved Godzilla. And speaking of, that's pretty much it for all of the New Empire stuff. The scaling remains the same, but the scaling chain has indeed changed from the New Empire. Now, if you guys do agree with some of the stuff I say on here, just leave a comment, and we can have a discussion or whatever about it on YouTube, or even in Discord if you have my Discord. Now, don't be a crybaby and go into the comments be like, you're just a fanboy, you just goon G19, you don't want King of the Monsters to be suppressed, and things like that. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.